want to take a few minutes to explain the grading notes for the memoir, and most of these are general grading notes, but specifically for the memoir. First of all, when I grade your papers, I understand that you have put time and energy into writing. And oftentimes you write about something that is very personal, and I take all of those things into account as I grade. But I also have to take into account that the purpose of my feedback is to help you understand how you can improve as a writer. First of all, your papers are returned to you through the original assignment link, and that's why it's important that you submit through that link on Blackboard. Otherwise, I can't return it there. The grade on your paper should be the same grade that is entered in the grade book. If there's a discrepancy, let me know. For initial papers, I provide 2 grades. The first one is based on the purpose of the essay as defined by the assignment, the content and the structure, and the second is grammar and mechanics. I do this initially because it dilutes the effect of the grammar and mechanics grade, which typically is the most difficult part of writing for students. Your papers were, for the most part, A and B papers. However, the grammar and mechanics was a distraction, and that's part of what you have to address as you move forward. After you have reviewed your paper, the comments that I've made on it, the rubric that is attached to it, and the general notes that I'm discussing here, if you have questions, please ask. The reason I provide the review assignment is because research indicates that the best way to improve your writing is to correct your own work. You do need a foundational vocabulary. I introduced that at the very beginning of the semester. We do review the rules and address ways to make corrections. There are lectures in the Rules and Review tab about the rules in the Hacker and Summers text by section. But you have to understand what the rule is and how to apply it. And oftentimes that means you have to know that vocabulary, which is why I assign it at the beginning of the semester. So your paper has been returned to you with a grade based on the criteria that I introduced to you early on in the semester. In the syllabus section, the rubric was provided there. These are the general grading notes. When I go through your paper, I identify errors in grammar and mechanics, and I may miss some. However, I do try to identify them routinely. If I identify it more than once, it's to let you know that it exists, not because I don't think you'll understand once you see it marked one time. If you'll notice over here on the right, there is a comment box, and it has initials and a number in it. Those are my initials. In some cases, depending on which computer I'm using, there may be other letters and numbers there. But this is simply a sequential numbering of the comment box, is not related to the rules in the textbook. There are rules in your textbook. And let me pause for a second. Attached to the review assignment is a copy of this. It is the same information that is in the inside back cover of the Hacker and Summers text. But I gave you this so that you could go through and easily see the rule numbers that have been marked in your paper. Those rules correspond to rules that are in the textbook. The S's under sentence style, the W's under word choice, the G's under grammatical sentences, the P's under punctuation and mechanics. So when I mark the rules, I try to key those to the rule numbers in the textbook so that you can understand specifically why I have marked those. Now there are some things that I call no excuse errors. You should not use the pronoun you. You should not use contractions. Commas and periods go inside closing quotation marks, and there are very distinct rules about when to use numbers and when to use words. If you can say the number in 2 or fewer words, you use words. If it takes more than 2 words, you use numerals. There are some distinctions if it has to do with time or a calendar date. However, these rules are pretty clear-cut and some that you should not make. You can use Control F to search your document for U or even for apostrophes so that you can correct that. Some papers still have formatting errors. The reviewed papers have been corrected for formatting, so you can compare your original submission to what I returned to you, but you need to remove space after the paragraph in the paragraph formatting. You need to use an inserted page number in the header, and you need, as well as your last name, and you need to use this file name format. The number of the course, your section, your last name, your first name, and the assignment name. This first section is always the same, and then the assignment name is specific to what you've turned in. To correct the errors in paragraph formatting, you go to Paragraph, make sure that these are set to 0. If you want to indent the paragraph automatically, you can set that to first line. When you double space, this takes care of double spacing. This is particularly the error that's being made. If I say you have extra space, either you have hit the Enter key more than once, but more than likely you simply did not take care of moving these numbers to 0. Again, I remind you that if the comment box has initials in it, that those are not rule numbers. If I have added things into your paper, I have used brackets and typically colored font. I sometimes offer suggestions. I mark through words. I suggest that you combine sentences. Rather than say, Mr. Smith is a teacher, Mr. Smith walked into the room, Mr. Smith has gray hair, we can combine those. Mr. Smith, a teacher, walked into the room. Mr. Smith, a teacher with gray hair, walked into the room. If you can combine sentences so that you move forward more quickly, it's better. You want to always be as concise as possible. Sections S5 and S6 address sentence structure. You don't have to be a grammarian. You don't have to be well versed in grammar to think in terms of combining ideas into sentences and showing relationships between them. You do it every day. You also need to connect ideas. If I've got that bracket with connect, it means that something's missing and I had to make a leap of faith to go between one idea to the next. That goes to coherence. Is the relationship between the ideas clear? If not, I've put in there that you need to connect. You can do that by adding words such as in addition, first, second, on the other hand, or you can do it through your sentence structure. What is the relationship between the ideas? In narrative, I noticed that I added paragraphing. I didn't emphasize this, I didn't penalize you for it, but notice that in narrative, the paragraph helps the reader to shift between speakers, ideas, settings, and sort of gives them a moment or two to shift gears along with you. So I made those corrections. Any place you see new paragraph, that means I added that paragraph to your paper. Again, there was no penalty. It's just letting you see how to use that in your writing. Some teachers view it differently, so make sure that you're clear. I noted in several of your papers that it is a weak subject. I go back to this periodically. When we use it as a subject, as in it was my first time to come to school, that often is not very strong. So instead of saying it was my first time to come to school, again, that idea of combining sentences. The first time I came to school, what happened? The first time I came to school, I walked in the wrong door. Instead of, it was the first time I came into school and I walked into the wrong door. Show the relationship between the ideas. If you used it as a weak subject, I provided these links so that you could access a discussion of the different uses for it, but realize that sometimes it is used incorrectly as the subject of a sentence, and it is incorrect because there is no antecedent, and that is a major error. So make sure that you're aware and look at your writing analytically from the perspective of these ideas. Finally, the thesis should always be the last sentence of the introductory paragraph. Your textbook said that a memoir did not have to have a thesis, that it could have a theme, but that was a distinction and a requirement that I placed, that for your paper you were to state the thesis and it should be the last sentence of the introductory paragraph. That's standard. The body of the memoir should provide plot, conflict, setting. It's a story. You should have sensory detail that helps your reader to see and experience. Dialogue is used to reveal character and advance story. You're wanting your reader to share the experience as opposed to simply telling them about something that happened. For the memoir, the conclusion is supposed to be an insight. It's something more than what is revealed in the telling of the story. You can consider it as the aha moment. For some of you, there was simply a restatement of the thesis. These are the things I looked for in your paper. Let me show you the rubric now. This is the rubric that I used to grade your paper. It is the rubric that was provided to you in the syllabus section of the course shell at the very beginning. I did add information about the purpose because this was to have been a memoir, and I wanted to make sure that I had that in there so that we would be clear. This rubric is also attached to your specific paper. I copy and paste this into your paper and provide that to give you feedback. When I look at your paper and after I have finished, I go through and I highlight what I found in your paper. I typically use blue, but if this is true of your paper, then that's what I highlight. Did you do all of these things? If you did, then that's what I mark. If you didn't, then I go to the next section, to the B, and look at whether or not you needed more specific details. Was there a problem with coherence? Did I have several of those connects? Were there problems with language? Did you use, tone is appropriate? Did you use contractions? Those are things I look for. Notice that G errors are major errors. They typically count 10%, which is why if you have 4 or more major errors, then you have a D or an F paper. What I look for are these elements every time. And then if you don't meet that criteria, I look to see where in this rubric your paper falls. And I mark those so that you can see where you need to improve. Your goal is to have everything marked under an A essay. In the beginning, I give a separate grade for mechanics, grammar, and usage because it dilutes that. As we move later into the semester, then I consider 4 or more errors to mean that a paper cannot move past a D. But if you go through the review exercises and understand why you made mistakes and how to correct them, then you will eliminate those errors from your paper. And that's always the goal, to improve.